Welcome back, Honors. Welcome back to it. Welcome back to your flipped classroom and me not yelling. All right, now look. So the big thing about it is my voice is pretty much shot right now. All right, so it's like really bad. I'm really having a hard time like carrying it very far and stuff like that. But it's gonna be okay. We're gonna go ahead and record this flip and get it up so we can spend time reviewing in class. Okay, really great job today. Shout out all y'all. Y'all did so good when it came to like covering some new stuff, playing a little fun game and things like that, and having a good time, right? So number one thing about it, though, is we got to pick up where we left off in class, right? We left off in class talking about Ivan the Terrible and his dynasty dying out, right? So we left off after he has just recently stabbed his son in the side of the head, and his other son, Fedor, has taken over the throne. Now, if you want to know a little bit more about like Ivan the Terrible and stuff like that, his last name is known as the Rurikid dynasty, all right? It's like Rurikid. So if you actually go back and look at a family tree and try to figure out how he and the next monarch that we're going to talk about are related, they're actually related by marriage, all right? So the thing about it is, after Ivan dies, he actually dies, we believe, from aggressive mercury poisoning, because apparently he did a lot of mercury thinking it would like make him like stronger and like use it as a medicine and things like that, but it ended up killing him. And so we believe that Ivan the Terrible died from that kind of type of poisoning. Fedor takes over and he does a decent job. He like carries Russia through a couple of rough points, but then after he dies, Russia descends into what is known as the time of troubles, right? When Poland actually invades and like Russia loses several wars. But then Russia begins to bounce back after this man's family takes over, right? So in 1613, oh wow, this is bad. There we go, that's a little bit better. In 1613, that's a lot better. In 1613, this guy's family is going to take over, right? This man is known as Peter the Great. His family is known as the Romanov family, right? So the big thing you got to kind of ask yourself immediately when you're looking at these two people is, why does this guy look so Russian, Ivan the Terrible, with his beard and the big boyer coat and stuff like that, and this guy doesn't? He looks much more like you would think like French and stuff like that. Well, that is the defining aspect of Peter the Great. Peter the Great is the guy that is responsible for making Russia what you would consider a Western-style government, a Western-style civilization, a Western-style country. And by Western, I mean more Western European, right? Much more in line with the things that France was doing and Spain was doing and England was doing during this key time period. Now, really quickly, though, how did he do this? How did there become a massive transition between Ivan's Russia and Peter the Great's Russia, right? Well, the reason why, one of the biggest things is, it has to do with this journey that he took. So when Peter the Great was a young man, he actually put himself in disguise and decided to go on a tour of Western Europe, right? It's actually referred to as his Grand Embassy. Go ahead and write that down, Grand Embassy, Grandembassy. Or you can actually call it as well his grand tour, right? Where he actually toured around and went to several key countries that were very powerful, very modernized, and very intense, right? And he went to several different places depending on what they were good at. He went to the Netherlands to learn about trade and shipbuilding and things like that. He went to the English to learn about naval fleets and also military changes and things like that. And he went to France to learn about culture, music, art, and just being French. Now the big thing about it though is he then took all these ideas, brought them back to Russia, and used them to modernize Russia, right? After seeing Western Europe and all the things they did, he decided to come back and implore the things that he had seen onto the Russian people. Now, he's got a whole other crazy, fantastical story, right? Peter the Great was a very young man. He actually ruled with his brother at one point. He almost got overthrown by his sister and stuff like that. I have a 1,000-page biography on him at home. But the big thing about it, though, is we're not going to worry about that stuff right now. We're just going to worry about the transition from Ivan's dynasty into the Romanovs and why Peter the Great is so important. And Peter the Great is so important because of that modernization, right? And this is all happening during the early or late 1600s, early 1700s. So he's actually a little bit after the English Civil War. He's one of the later big absolutists that we actually need to talk about. Now, going forward, though, he also comes back and develops the Russian Navy. He goes to war with the Ottomans. He goes to war with the Swedes. He goes to war with all these other different figures using a newly developed navy that he actually learned from the British, right? So the thing about it, though, going into it is he's going to expand Russia using that navy, and he's going to decide to go to war, right? And the number one thing that he wanted more than anything else was to try and simulate what a lot of these other countries were doing in the sense of actually having a warm water port. Go ahead and write that down for me really quick. He wants to make Russia an important European state with a warm water port. Warm water ports are ports that don't freeze over every single year, right? Well, the thing about it is, as we know in Russia, Russia's very cold, and they had this big issue with like trying to find a warm water port. The only land that he actually could find that had area for a warm water port was up towards the northern side of Russia, but that area was controlled by Sweden and the young King Charles of Sweden. So he goes to war with him, creates Russia as an important military state, and tries to dissect a small bit of land out of that area. But he also has other major military changes and cultural changes. Militarily, he creates a standing army of 210,000, which is an absolutely massive military. He also has cultural changes. He has a book of Russian manners written based off the ideas that he saw in France, right? Seeing like clothing and what they were wearing, and also he outlawed. So the boyars are the nobles of Russia. I'm going to say that again. The boyars are the nobles of Russia, and they were very well known for when you come back into my classroom, you'll see Fedor like up there above the TV and stuff like that. They were very well known for wearing big furry robes and stuff like that, Fedor is wearing in that picture. They're also very well known for wearing those big hats and stuff like that Ivan was wearing in the picture that we saw in class, right? Well, he brings back this book of Russian manners, talks about how you will eat, how you will dine with multiple utensils, and how he was going to outlaw the old boyar style, right? He was like, we're not going to dress like that anymore. We're going to dress instead like the French, like the Dutch, like the English, and we are going to be Western, right? So also a part of that is he was like, those men over there in the Netherlands and in England and in France, they shaved their beards, right? So he actually outlawed beards being worn around in Moscow and any of the other major cities in Russia. Now, could you keep your beard? Yes, but you had to pay a tax, actually. You had to pay a beard tax, which was really, really funny, just to keep your Russian beard, right? But he wanted them outlawed just because he thought they were uncouth, they were uncivilized, and they just weren't Western, right? Because men in England and the Netherlands and France and Sweden and all these other places aren't walking around with these big old giant beards, right? He also brought more rights to women. There was an old Mongolian standard that Peter the Great undoes, where women used to have to walk around society with veils over their face, right? He actually has those things eliminated, gets rid of them completely. It says that women can actually be seen very easily in society and that he expects them to be, right? Another big thing that Peter the Great also does as well is he forces everyone to speak to him in French, right? So really, really quick, jot that down. Makes everyone speak to him in French. When it's about affairs of the state, he wanted everyone to speak to him in French. Because you know how in the modern era, if you go to Europe or if you go to anywhere just about, the United States is such a large power and stuff like that, that most people due to England and the United States, in many other countries, know how to speak English, right? Well, that's what it was like during this time period with France, right? France was very large and very powerful and intense, and they were also under the rule of Louis XIV. I am the state, laissez-moi, and all that stuff as well. Due to that, everyone knew how to speak French, okay? So he actually said, if you're going to talk to me about affairs of the state, you better come correct, and you better speak French, right? Now, the other big thing about it, though, is, speaking of big things, little fun fact, Peter the Great, when he went on this tour, when he went off all these places to go see the Netherlands, to go see France, go see Great Britain, he actually did all of it in disguise, right? And people would be like, wait, you're Peter the Great, aren't you? And he'd be like, or you're Peter Romanov from Russia. He'd be like, no, that's not me. Can't you see I'm wearing a disguise? And people were like, yeah, bro, but you're pretty easy to spot. Dude was 6'8". He was massive. He was like 6'8", huge individual. So I think it's just funny that this guy comes back and changes all of Russia, but did it in disguise. It was like sticking out like a sore thumb the entire time. Now, cutting back to that warm water port, though, does he ever pull this off? Does he go to war with Sweden? Does he capture all this land? Does he create a new city with a very, very nice port? He does, and he actually names it St. Petersburg, right? He goes to war with Sweden, takes over that chunk of land up towards the Baltic Sea, and he grows his influence and creates St. Petersburg. Ironically enough, not named after him, named after St. Peter from the Bible, St. Petersburg. So going into it, though, as well, it is like a window to the west, right? It is the new Russian capital up until 1918, and it is a warm water port city that looks exactly like all of the other European cities you've seen in your dreams, in your textbooks, and travel brochures, right? And on top of that, he has a new palace built for himself, and it's called the Winter Palace. It's in Rococo style, which is a little bit like Baroque, but a little bit more pastels and a little bit more soft colors. And also, this big new warm water port brings new goods and ideas to Russia and cements Russia as a Western power, right? So big thing going into it is we now have another big guy on the block. We have Russia going into this, but we will spend our time in class reviewing tomorrow. I'll see y'all soon. Y'all have a good one.